What is up, guys? EJ here, aka PuckBond007, and welcome to the Movie Reviewers 100, this great collaboration channel here on YouTube that I am proud to be a part of. So this week is documentary week, an interesting week, a tough week for me because documentaries is probably the one genre I don't have that many movies of. But I chose a great documentary from a decade ago now, and that's The Fog of War. Came out in 2003, directed by Errol Morris, who's most well known for The Thin Blue Line, another great documentary from 1988. He's also worked on a couple of Academy Awards shows, producing and filming segments for that. But this film is also subtitled 11 Lessons Learned from the Life of Robert S. McNamara. Robert S. McNamara was the Secretary of Defense under JFK, and then later Lyndon Johnson, following JFK's assassination, and he was mostly responsible for America's involvement and escalation of the Vietnam War. A very interesting man. It's basically an hour and 40 minutes long interview, broken up into 11 segments. These 11 quote lessons about war, and interspersed is footage of World War II and the Vietnam War, and so on, stuff like that. The film actually starts off him talking about his involvement with the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 while he was Secretary of Defense under JFK, and he basically says America and Russia were that close to nuclear war, yeah, it's a very interesting story, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and how close we were to mutual annihilation is pretty interesting during the Cold War. Prior to that, he actually remembers when he was 2 years old, when World War I ended. He says he remembers the day that World War I ended, and he was only 2 years old at the time. After that, he went on to college at Cal Berkeley during the Depression, and then World War II came. During World War II, he served in the Air Force and helped develop strategies and planning for and development of the B-29 bomber, sort of the bomber that changed the American war against Japan, because they basically firebombed the hell out of the Japanese prior to dropping the 2 atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I was really quite shocked at how much damage these firebombs did to most of Japan's cities and its citizens, basically wiping them out before even the 2 nuclear bombs were dropped. After World War II, he went on to work for Ford Motor Company. He was part of the quote whiz kids generation, and briefly he served as Ford's president. Then JFK got elected, and he asked Robert S. McNamara to become his Secretary of Defense, even though Robert and JFK both agreed he wasn't qualified for the job. So basically the second half of the film mostly focuses on the Vietnam War, and how basically through a series of assumptions and misinformation, how America really got involved in the Vietnam War. And for the longest time now, I've actually never really understood the Vietnam War and how basic events unfolded and stuff. But watching this and doing a little research, I now have a better picture of how that war came to be and America's involvement in it. Towards the end of the film, L. Morris, who's doing the interview, who you never see but you hear his voice a couple times, asks him if he feels responsible for America's involvement in Vietnam, and he doesn't deny it and he doesn't admit to it, but you can basically tell he feels pretty bad about what happened and how over 58,000 American soldiers lost their lives during that conflict. So yeah, it's a very interesting film if you like movies about war, and especially movies about America's war history during the 20th century. Yeah, it's a very interesting documentary about a very interesting man. There's also lots of great sort of sound clips of him actually talking to the president and other top advisors who he worked with during that time. And it also goes on to say he became president of the World Bank following his time as Secretary of Defense from 1968 to 1981. The film was made while he was 83 years old, so he's still a very bright young, well, not young, but he seems like it during these interviews. I believe the film must have been shot in about 2000, because he says he was born in 1916, and he actually died in 2009. But yeah, very interesting man, and very interesting sort of history lesson about America and two major wars in the past century. So that is my choice for documentary week, the Fog of War from 2003. If you haven't seen it and that's the sort of thing you're interested in, I highly recommend it. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll see ya.
Bond. James Bond.